Hi guys, welcome back to Edenic Round Table, the virtual sessions. I'm Wayne Willis. As always, I'm joined with Jamie Del Grosso and Rob Lewis, my partners at Edenic Group. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hi, Wayne.
And today we have a guest on the show, Lucy Blackley, who is the founder of Bombyx PLM, a product lifecycle management company. Hi Lucy.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very good, very good. Thank you for taking the time out to be on.
Yeah.
It's a weird time for us all right now, isn't it? In terms of what we're doing, in terms of the lockdown and the whole COVID thing. But it's nice to still to be able to communicate and keep in touch with the connections.
I think it's really nice, and I think we've discovered all these things for so long that we've taken for granted with technology, and people are really starting to value them. And I think, obviously it's unfortunate that this has happened, but we're going to come out of this maybe with a bit more appreciation for these tools that can connect us, like globally.
Yeah. So what I'm really interested in today's topic really is to focus a little bit on the manufacturing sector. This is one that we hear a lot about because typically when we talk about doing things through virtual means, you naturally get that response of, well, we're a physical company and we have production lines and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit harder for them to think differently about their offer, even though there are solutions out there. I suppose it's harder to break away from that. Obviously, you work in product lifecycle management, so you're quite close to the sector. Just as your initial thoughts, how does it feel on the ground for you for manufacturing as a whole?
Well, I think there's been a lot more inquiries into technology. I think the downtime that people have had, they're looking towards the future where they can say, okay, actually, we have this downtime, so we can start to look into solutions so that when we do go back to what could be the new normal, we need to kind of have these tools ready to be able to kind of go back even stronger. But the point, with manufacturing, we've had some ups and downs. I mean, the probably one of the hardest hit sectors is manufacturing, because with globalization, we had China that was on shutdown, and now they're starting to slowly open back up. In the West, we've shut down, and we've got people left, right, and centre cancelling orders, amending orders. To some extent, making up their own rules about what they will accept and what they won't, and how much discount they're going to take. It's been an absolute nightmare for many people, and I guess the problem is that somehow it doesn't feel like we're all in it together. It doesn't feel like it's a collaboration or a partnership. It's like, every man for themselves. I'm going to save my business, but actually, without your stakeholders and your partners, your suppliers, you have no business, because it takes so long to build those relationships. And we're currently in a time of building, that community, building those connections. And I think we should be, thinking about those companies that need to survive it as well. Because if they go down, it's not, I personally don't believe it's okay just to say, okay, well, we're going to find a new supplier. Obviously, if that's the case and they do go down and your business is still intact, you do need to find a new supplier. But
sure,
why not in these times just work together to kind of find some solutions and work together to make it work through these tough times.
Yeah, it's a little bit of this all in it together kind of approach. Because I suppose you're right, it's a knock-on effect, isn't it? If there's one link in the chain that drops, then there's a knock-on effect to everyone globally, really, in that whole sector. But using this downtime, and of course, trying to keep those relationships strong as well. I suppose there's an opportunity here, really, to rethink actually what that collaboration means outside of the norm, so to speak, and actually how they can work together in a different area. Maybe are you seeing much of that? Any kind of innovative thinking coming out of the sector?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I've been reading a lot. Like, I've had Drapers contact me a lot for my opinion on certain things that are happening around COVID-19. And, you do see a variation. I see a lot more of the SMEs having that more community-based thought process than the larger companies. Like, I've just been reading this morning about, some shopping centres only receiving up to 50% of their rent, where at this time last year they would have received about 80%, so the 30% behind what they should be owed, etc. But I just think it's really, I mean, you shouldn't just be cutting your rents, because I don't know, there's a problem with that, isn't there? Like, if somebody kind of went into your shop and took your clothes and walked out, you wouldn't be okay with it. We're in contracts here, and as much as it's it's a really, awful time and we are going to have a loss in money, it's not just us that are affected, but it's absolutely everybody. So if we stop, then they're going to stop, and it's just kind of the domino effect on what can happen. So it doesn't really make sense to it should be, in a way, business as usual. And I know that's a kind of an expression that's being used a lot here, but and I think in the future it will be business unusual, because we're going to have to change how we approach manufacturing, product, even thinking about the environment and sustainability. But I do think we should be practicing, continually supporting those businesses by paying on time. Some of these small businesses that are partnered with these larger businesses, they can't afford the same things as well, so they need to continue. And we should be helping each other to kind of let everyone get out of this alive together.
Sorry, Jamie.
I think what I found quite interesting is there's been a split in how people have handled this. And I think what Lucy's saying is right, is like you can sort of see the difference between the SMEs and the sort of more legacy companies. But I'm seeing people either going full on into this, let's collaborate, let's work together and kind of fight through it, or you get like the full like Mad Max approach where it's kind of like, this apocalyptic every man for themselves. So it's kind of been interesting to see how certain companies have reacted to this.
Yeah. I mean, what about the global organizations as well, Rob? I mean, Rob, how would you see like sort of consumer health pharma? You spent 30 years in these massive global organizations. Like, how would you typically navigate something like this, do you think? Do you recall something similar back in the day, away from not COVID-19, but
back in the day. I wasn't around in the Second World War. I was born in 1969. No, I don't. This is really unprecedented. But in my sector in pharma, a lot of those guys are doing really well because they make antiseptics or disinfectants, or they're making things that protect people, or they're making things that deal with fever, etc. You're obviously seeing some pharma stocks going through the roof because they're announcing vaccine programs, etc., etc. So in that sector, you're seeing something really interesting. But there's also something really interesting happening in I would imagine working on those factories is going to be quite tricky in the sense of maintaining social distancing. And it's okay putting in Tesco's putting up a perspex shield at the till, but when you're moving pallets around and tipping 25 kilogram bags into hoppers, it's very difficult to have that distancing. So I think that's going to be something they're going to have to deal with. But fundamentally, my oil sectors probably will come out of this relatively well. Lucy, you've obviously got a background in fashion, which is it'd be interesting to see what's happening to those guys. Because obviously that's not a sector that's directly beneficial to COVID, unless you tell me otherwise.
Well, actually, the suppliers are they're changing their factories to be able to make products to fight it. So you've got LMVH Group using their old their perfume factories to make hand sanitizer now. Right. So there are there's the flipping of what they have done. Obviously, sales have gone down. It's not a priority to have fashion, and I do believe that in the future there's going to be a change in how people buy, hopefully, because we've gone on too long now where I feel like this is a message from we've got this message from kind of like from nature saying that we've gone too far in a way. And I do believe that we'll have to start looking at even more bigger sustainability projects to be able to maintain what we're doing. I do think buying fashion is going to change dramatically, hopefully. I do hope that I don't want us to go back to how we've been consuming things, because that's we were already in the red with it. It was already a big danger. I just don't want them to, we've got these clear skies now, and I'm just worried that once we do go back up to normal, we aren't considering these, the beauty of, the silver lining that we've had with what's, happening with, rivers and lakes and, clear skies, less air pollution. We need to kind of maintain that somehow. So we need to get a plan in action, really.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that whole fast fashion movement looks, like very old thinking moving forward, doesn't it? The priority is spending your cash on a new pair of leggings because every week is, it must be old thinking now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real. I mean, as you say, there are some silver linings here to some extent, even though it feels like doom and gloom. And I understand that a lot of businesses certainly are struggling and are panicking a little bit how to kind of keep going. But this is the time for really new thinking, isn't it? Because one, there's the catalyst for change in terms of your impact on environment and carbon footprint and things like that. Definitely, but I presume consumerism is going to change as well, you know, in the way that we're buying and how much we're buying, and maybe recognizing that in this period of lockdown that we're not buying as much, we're not importing as much, and you know, maybe that'll be a trend that continues and manufacturers are going to have to navigate anyway.
Yeah, I think so, because it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, people are going to lose jobs and stuff if product is reduced. If we're using ways to make it smarter, like using technology to, you know, enhance like blockchain technology and say, okay, this is the product. Once it's been recycled, let's get some, you know, barcodes and where people can scan things to know what happened. People want a story nowadays. People are interested in the whole story and visibility. And I think some people are impressed by knowing that their product was once something else. They want to know who's made it. And I think it's more about using, you know, this connectivity that we've got through this period to kind of emphasize how actually manufacturing can be improved. And it doesn't have to mean the end of people's jobs or the loss of manufacturing, but how we're taking these materials and creating them into something new because they're sustainable. It's not something where that's a, you know, a polyester pair of trousers, that's all it's going to be, it's going to end up in landfill, but actually making a real effort now to look at where we buy these products, when we buy them, and how we can, you know, when they come to the end of their life, which is hopefully a lot longer than it has been with all this fast fashion going on, people know where to go to drop them off, to have them remade in something else. And maybe, I mean, it would be interesting to see, you know, a year later, what happened to those pair of polyester bottoms. What are they now? Are they a bottle? What are they? It would be interesting, you know, I think people are interested in that. They're interested in what they're doing, where it's going, and actually how we can all be part of the circular economy.
Yeah. I mean, there's an opportunity to go beyond the product as well, isn't there? You touched upon it a little bit earlier on. We were sort of saying, you know, manufacturers at the moment, we're seeing this real collaboration of utilizing their skills or equipment or whatever to deliver solutions for, you know, whatever it might be, hand sanitizer or transportation or logistics or whatever in times of crisis. But on a wider level, if you can think that way, you know, for something as terrible as what we're experiencing now, then actually you can think that way commercially as well. And actually you can come up with all sorts of outputs that go beyond what comes off the end of the production line to monetize your business.
Yeah, I think, and do you know what, like you hear it like in the press and in articles about how factory workers are low skilled workers, but it's incredibly hard to make a pair of, you know, a garment. When you get some of these machinists that know every part of every garment and how to make it and how to fix problems, it is not low skill. And the fact that they're able to flip their skills and make other products, it just goes to show how essential they are and how it is not a low skilled job. I think these people that are calling it low skilled, I would love to see them on a machine doing what they do, because it's so tough. You know, even I understand the whole process, but to do it to the level that these machine workers do it on a daily basis, it's impossible for me.
Yeah. Are you finding that you're adapting or needing to adapt your own products and your own PLM software as well to navigate what's going on beyond product?
So we've had a bit of interest from PPE, which is great. We've had some interest from, you know, pharmaceuticals, not necessarily, you know, strictly like tablets and medication, but those brands that kind of expand on other areas of healthcare. So for me, like, I'm just looking towards the future on how, you know, how I can actually take my product and kind of have it. It's already a great tool that helps brands manufacture better and smarter. But what I want to do is then take it to the next level by having people, when they're sourcing their product, knowing exactly that a mile up the road, there's a material that is a lot better for the environment. It's maybe cheaper, it's maybe the same price, you know, and working out certain CO2 levels that you're contributing to, you know, to the problem. And then, you know, having re-educating people on how much damage they're doing, and with alternatives through like artificial intelligence, learning about the new ways in which they can do things. I think this is a really interesting thing, and I don't think I'm changing my system too much. it's constantly evolving. We've never had any downtime on, on the system. We're constantly implementing features every month. But now I'm just looking at ways that we can, coming out of this, we can educate people and inform them and hopefully inspire them to continue doing things in a great way, as opposed to just doing things as they've always done it.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a higher demand for digital as well as we come out of this. I think the point that Lucy made at the start, with people maybe taking some of these tools for granted and not really embracing the digital tools and sort of landscape that we have already. Now, obviously, people are almost forced to use them and see the benefit of them and see the power that you can have if you do embrace these tools. So I actually think when we come out of this, there's a good chance that what we'll see is like a massive uptake on brands starting to embrace digital a little bit more and almost have like a sort of digital revolution, a little bit like a little growth in that step to, bring on more digital projects.
Definitely, because we've had influx on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and email, and not just social. With the inquiries have been up 400%, 500%, 600%. So people are looking at these things because they've got the downtime. They're using that time to re-educate themselves on what's available, so that when they go back into, working, maybe it'll change. Maybe nobody works from, everyone works from home in the future. I'm not sure. I wouldn't like that. I think people need to get out of the house, but they're going to see these things when they go back into working in a more regular way at a building that's not their home. I do think that people are going to be wanting to take these tools and say, hey, I found this whilst we were down, and I think this can up our productivity by up to 50%. I think because a lot of things, having productivity, feeling productive within your day, like it just sparks innovation. It sparks ideas because you're driven, because you're not bogged down by the admin and the boring tasks that you need to do, because you're using tools that can streamline all that.
Yeah. And now's a really good time to rethink infrastructure as well, isn't it? Given that a lot of the infrastructure isn't being used. So, I mean, if you wanted to explore in terms of cost, obviously we're doing a lot of remote working now, and we don't want as you say, we don't want everybody to remote work forever, because obviously things still need to be built. But you might find that the scale of the infrastructure that you've got maybe isn't as required in terms of building, in terms of the utilities that are going to the building, in terms of transportation, logistics. Maybe you can look at wider partnerships and wider opportunities to share the load, so to speak. Again, that whole collaborative thing. Which again, not only is a cost-cutting exercise, but also opens new opportunities, new markets, and new contacts, presumably.
Yeah, but the collaboration. We're talking about collaboration and how that's not just in a local vicinity. It's like actually it's global, it's worldwide. You can access so many different talents from all over the world. But I do think that we're going to see that, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, we might see some onshoring of production in many countries, because they're seeing this and they're fearing it, and they might want to think, okay, well, actually, we could do this in our own country, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think, but I do think there's the two ends of the spectrum, and we could see an uprise in both of them, really.
Yeah, I think we'll probably see something around the idea of jobs as well, because as someone that's worked remotely for quite a while anyway, I'm kind of used to that. A lot of companies that I've spoken to in the past kind of fear the idea of having someone working remotely for their company, and they don't like the idea of that. And I think maybe now it's given maybe some of those companies that would fear that normally the chance to see how that would work. So there may actually be something where we come out of this, there's a rise in people embracing remote working anyway, and working people that maybe are further afield or with different skill sets.
Yeah, I actually have a problem with people worried about their colleagues and their teams working from home, because I feel there's a lack of trust in a company if they don't trust. They always go, oh, but I want to make sure that they're doing their job. Like, some people don't embrace technology because they want to see physically that they've got a full day's work. But actually, if they use this technology to work smarter, they can fill their day with thinking about better products, which could actually help the bottom line of a company. And I do think these managers, and I call them dinosaurs all the time, because they don't embrace anything, and they're just bothered about who's in work, are they clocking in and clocking out. Like, clocking in systems, like they're so archaic, but they're still going on today. You know, actually trusting people feel empowered through trust, and actually they do a better job if they're trusted. So if people do need to work from home, and we can increase, you know, flexible working, because I think it is possible, and I think people are realizing the possibilities of flexible working, you're going to get a lot more out of your workforce anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a massive thing around efficiency, because you being present 8 or 10 hours a day, people, you know, if you see them leaving at 6:30 every night and being in at 7, that's generally seen to be a good thing. But in reality, that's absolute nonsense, because you can't be productive for that whole period of time. It's about working smartly. It's about not having stupid meetings all the time. It's not asking to write endless PowerPoint presentations to get to the next step in the project. I think all of this stuff shines a light on that really, really powerfully. Because let's face it, if you can do 30 minutes of really good work, it's probably better than spending 10 hours of fanning around all day, which is what a lot of people do when they're salaried.
Yeah, and I think with the tools that exist now as well, you can still have that level of monitoring, if you want, of kind of what work is being produced, but in a much less intrusive way, and allow people to actually work in the way they need to. I mean, we covered it in the last video we did, but, you know, people are productive at different times. People have different ways of working to get the best results. And working like this, you know, gives people that opportunity to do that. And it doesn't mean that can't be monitored and it can't be tracked in you know, the same sort of way, just maybe less intrusive and sort of a little bit more friendly for the employees that are having to work like that.
Yeah. I do believe that if people kind of trust people more, they'll see an increase in productivity. Like, as we are talking about technology here, there are tools to monitor that stuff. You're all logged into this system. You're all marking what's being done. There is full visibility. It's not just, oh, they're working at home, I can't see what they're doing. There's tools to kind of connect everyone so that everybody knows what everyone's doing, and they can pass the work around as and when they've finished it, and it goes on to the next person. So I just think, yeah, this kind of archaic dinosaur way of working, I do think it'll die out eventually. And the people that don't embrace flexibility are actually probably going to be the first businesses to go, because they can't adapt.
Yeah, we're in a period, I guess, for for all sectors, but just on the topic of manufacturing, they're in certainly a period of forced disruption. I mean, we sort of talk about being disruptive and you know, by not embracing digital technology and all this kind of stuff, then, you know, you're at risk. But actually the disruption, and we've said this on a couple of videos now, the disruption has already happened, you know, because now we have a global pandemic. So the industry has been disrupted. So now is the prime opportunity to really start rethinking what it is that you guys produce, not only in products, but what the purpose of your company is as a whole, and how you can widen that offer. And of course, with your staff at home as well, they've probably got a million ideas that they've probably always wanted to try, or think they could do things better, or collaborations or whatever. Now might be the time to be hosting meetings like this, you know, through a video software, Zoom or whatever it might be. Where you start collecting ideas and you say to them, listen, we're at home, guys. We're not on the production line. Things aren't going out on the trucks. What would we do differently? And you'd be surprised what comes out of those very basic ideation sessions.
Yeah, I think there's a whole thing around, like, you know, if you serve a consumer need with a physical product today, think about how you turn that into a digital product that serves the same need. Because if your factory can't make stuff, it's unlikely your digital service is going to be interrupted. So obviously every cinema is closed in the UK today, but Netflix is doing incredibly well because they deliver the same need digitally. You can apply that thing into health, you can apply it to everything. So that's what we've been talking about this for quite a few years now, but, you know, people will see the value of that.
Well, you know, there's actually digital clothes as well. So for people that do love fashion, they can purchase digital clothes, and they don't exist in real life, but they can put them on their stories on Instagram, and people can see it. For those people that really genuinely love the art of clothing and fashion, they can do that. For me, it's not something that I'm majorly interested in. I'm an engineer, I'm a massive geek, but, you know, for those kind of fashionistas that love that, there is possibilities there. And for those people that, you know, they love that kind of social media atmosphere, they're able to kind of apply their stories without actually going very far, you know?
Yeah, it's so interesting, that, isn't it? And that goes back to my point earlier about what is the purpose of your company. Like, why do you make clothes? For what reason? You know, is it for your consumer to feel good? Is it for them to post it across their Instagram and be part of a community? Or, you know, what is the reason? And if you go back to that very core root, you might find that you can offer that solution, if you like, without the physical offer going out. If you make security products or something like that, then why do you make security products? Because people want to feel safe, or they want to feel like their property is not under risk, or they want to feel like their loved ones are protected, or whatever. So how can you facilitate that without the physical security problem? How can you reassure them? And I think you could say that for just about any industry, right?
Yeah, completely. But I mean, even for those that don't have this kind of digital aspect, I mean, every company in a way is digital because they have websites, they do sales online, most of them. So we've got a client called Lucy and Yak who make dungarees, and I'm a big fan of dungarees, so I was ecstatic to have them on board. But their unique selling point is that they are all about people. Every member of their staff and in the factories abroad are getting a fair wage. Their community hasn't slowed down because they can see the benefit in kind of supporting something like this. So it doesn't even have to be digital. It can be purely community based, and it will kind of live on and go through these things. Like the management of that company, Chris and Lucy, they shut down the warehouse and stuff, and they're actually managing all the stuff whilst their team are at home staying safe, and they're actually going in there and shipping all the stuff because they really genuinely care about their people. And these are the type of companies that are going to outlive any of this and actually come back stronger because actually they're putting people first. And I think collaboration and putting people first and all those great ethical things, it is the future of business.
Yeah. So in terms of the manufacturing sector, we're in the lull that we're in. What's the message? What would be our key message to anybody watching this? Because I mean, it's one that comes up all the time in terms of how do I keep my business sustainable and keep it going and keep the staff employed and all this kind of stuff if we can't physically make the product. I suppose the message is well, certainly from my point of view, is there's a real opportunity to use this time now to really refocus what it is that you do.
You use your time, to get, contact any company that you see that you're interested in. Maybe they don't offer free trials, but maybe if you message them in this current thing and maybe you inspire them to kind of create a free trial, get these free trials, ask them for something for free just for a short period so that you can up your skills. I've got some webinars set up for a few consultants and a few companies that I'm doing digitally to get people up in their skills in this time. I use Illustrator, or used to when I was in the fashion industry. I've got 100, probably 1,000 different brushes and drawings and stuff. If you're not good at Illustrator and you're not ready for 3D, message me, I'll give you all the bloody brushes that you want, just work on all these things that maybe you're not good at and then come back so that when you are brilliant at them, when you are going back into work, it becomes a 5-minute job for something that might have taken you an hour before. Just use this time to really concentrate on your skills and what you can contribute and give at the end of this to actually make your job easier and, improve the, your work culture and the partnerships and, that kind of feeling of team within your company.
Yeah, I think learning to adapt is obviously now we're seeing why it's so important. Pretty much anyone that I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks have suddenly realized how fragile their business model is, or for most people anyway. People always plan for things, like they plan what do we do for machine breaks, what do we do if this person's ill. Something like this isn't something that I don't think anyone was actually, no one's got a plan for this. And when those things are taken away and, that business model that they've got is suddenly completely at risk, people are now starting to panic. And I think that's why having that sort of diversification of how you deliver your service, having those additional arms, even if you are a very physical based business, looking at how you can embrace digital to maybe have some complementary services to that. Yeah. Now more than ever in a world that's constantly changing, it is really important for survival, not just right now, but going forward and resilience going forward.
Yeah, I do honestly think, in manufacturing, the supply chain is so fragile. We've just realized that. And I do believe that, go from analog to digital, use that, it could be Bombyx, it could be another tool, it could be anything, but use these tools that are built around connectivity to get everyone on one project live so that you're not all jumping around doing little bits and bobs. Actually, one information is enough and everyone can bounce off that and actually do their own bit and actually build up your, the workflow a lot quicker and improve on your processes. I do believe, I'm speaking to you guys, which is the right audience, but going digital is absolutely, it's vital, and it's definitely not a choice. And I think that we're going to come out of this realizing this.
Yeah, and there's always a worry about doing it and disrupting things, but as I say, you're already disrupted right now. Now's the time, isn't it, to be upskilling, to converting, to trialing new software. I mean, I would say certainly if you're a manufacturer or you own a manufacturing based company, ask yourself, where does your revenue stream come from? If you used to break down your business, really down to its bones, where is your revenue stream coming from? And the likelihood is it's probably coming up from one or two very core sources, both of which probably utilize a very physical infrastructure or supply chain or whatever it might be. And then ask yourself, how can you widen that by utilizing digital technology? Because, I mean, it's out there to see. I would also say that you're not the only manufacturer, in the boat kind of thing. I mean, everybody's having the same problem. So Lucy touched upon this earlier on, but certainly reaching out, talk to your fellow sector, talk to not just your sector, but actually the wider sector. Whether you're producing yogurt or you're producing jeans, you're producing product ultimately, and everybody's experienced the same sort of issue. So how can you work together? What are they doing? How can you complement each other with your skills? Certainly be doing some form of ideation. A video chat like this, there's loads of free software out there where you can get your employees on a video chat and have a huddle at 10 o'clock in the morning and ask the question, and you'll be so surprised about what comes out of that. And of course, now you've got the time to really look at those ideas and test them and model them and see what's out there to facilitate it. The worst thing you can possibly do is sit at home and panic about it, because the situation is still the same at the end of it. And I think it really is about seeing the opportunity over the negativity. Would you agree, guys?
Yeah, and I don't think it's just for yourself and your own business either. I think, obviously, at the moment, because it's such an extreme situation, it's highlighting all these potential issues that could exist and all these disruptors that could exist within any industry, I would imagine. But now is a time for people to take this breather, if you like, and sort of look at all the possible things that could disrupt those businesses. And it goes back to something that we always talk about in our workshops, which is the Facebook thing, where Facebook always say to their new employees, if we don't create the thing that kills Facebook, someone else will. So if you are finding these areas where you could be disrupted in your business, look at how you could get around that. And if you can come up with a solution that other people don't have, if anything, all you're doing is you are creating the benchmark for that. You are creating a service you could even sell on to your competitors and people that you're working with. So I think there's a much wider opportunity in this as well.
Yeah, do you know what's really interesting is, like, particularly in physical businesses, there's always a risk assessment, isn't there? In case somebody chops the leg off or something really extreme on the factory floor. And I just think, where's the risk assessment for this, for your core business, for your core model? How often do you look at it and say, okay, why are we set up again? What is it that we do? What is it we make? Why do we make it? What does it take us to make that? What do we need to make that happen? And what could affect that happening? Right now, it's a global pandemic. Who'd have thought? But actually, it could be one in a million different things. And touching on Lucy's point earlier on, especially if you're in a supply chain, if any one of them links drop out the chain, how do you mitigate that, or how do you get around that? And how do you get around that if several of those links drop out of the chain, like the situation we're in now? And if you don't have an answer for that, then now's the time to start thinking of one, because this is what you're experiencing.
Yeah, and I think asking yourself, what does this business do when what our core model is no longer relevant? If you look at things like, where it's referenced like Blockbusters or something like that, if we get to a point where VHS is no longer relevant or DVDs and people are moving on to a subscription service, what do we do? And if you don't have that answer, then you're in trouble. So I think all businesses should be asking that anyway. What happens if what we do is no longer relevant in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, Rob, we often use the reference to people like Kodak and people like that who were a very physical business. They made film, and ultimately that's a production line and a supply chain that manufactures that and sends that around the world. And then something like digital cameras come along and just take over the world, and that's it. So kind of all these examples of very famous disrupted companies. Current manufacturers really should be learning from that. What could Kodak have done? you know, to change that situation?
Kodak's like the best example of something like this, actually, because when we've spoken about this, it was, Rob will correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Kodak that actually came up with the digital camera, or developed a digital camera.
Yeah.
But because they were so set in they have to be a physical company, that's what they did. They kind of said, well, we don't want to focus on that because that's not what we do. We're about making a physical thing. And then obviously eventually other people did it, and you know, that sort of destroyed what Kodak was. So they actually had it. They had it already. They were one of the first people to sort of work on that technology. But because they were unwilling to think differently about what they did, they didn't embrace it. And it actually was the thing that ended up sort of destroying that company, or destroying the market share that they had.
Yeah, the biggest enemy to doing things differently is being really successful. Because if you've been really successful doing something, your heart's not in doing something else because you're making so much money from what you do today. But most companies should be thinking about business continuity plans. So I used to work on a brand where we used seaweed to make a product, and it all came from a certain country. So if a tanker hit the rocks in that country, all of our seaweed was gone. So we had to source it from lots of other places. But you can only anticipate so many things. I mean, that was an easy one to anticipate. But if the bottles we put that product in, you know, glass became something you couldn't buy anymore, you know, we never anticipated that. So you can't plan for everything, but you just need to be agile and be able to pick up and do something else to carry on going. Your consumers are still going to need things.
Those new ways of thinking, I think they create almost like launch pads for further services. So I mean, we embraced a lot of this remote sort of working suite quite early on in the business, and you know, it was actually just for us to work with each other and collaborate. But obviously, in a time like this, now we have that, we can say, well, we can use it for things like we're doing today. We can use it for remote consultation. We can do, you know, do webinars. So actually, you know, all these kind of innovations that are created and these new ideas, they're just the starting point, and they can be expanded on. If anything, all it's doing is creating more future opportunities for you and more things to consider.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, moving forward, I think there is a lot of opportunity out there. There's definitely opportunity for all sector businesses, and I think, you know, we just have to take this opportunity to explore it. And as you say, Rob, be agile. And regardless of how physical your company is, or what it produces, I don't think it really matters. There are solutions out there, but you know, usually you're not looking for the solutions, or you're not really looking for the solutions because you're too busy kind of trying to keep your company going and keep the profit line. And that's perfectly natural. It's not that there's anything wrong with that. But, you know, we've always said, certainly to our clients, that you have to dedicate a portion of your time to a portfolio of innovations, or a portfolio of interests, or revenue streams, or partnerships, or whatever that might be. And therefore, you have to dedicate the time to allow for that to happen. And yeah, you can't plan for everything, but you do need to have some form of, I don't like to use the term risk assessment, but yeah, a business continuity. You know, what does this business look like if something drops out of the bottom of the bucket? And you know, we've said it several times in this, but now is the perfect time to do that, because the bucket's opened up and now you're thinking about what to do. Lucy, I mean, for you and your clients, are you advising the similar sort of stuff? I mean, are you saying this? Is it the same message that you're putting out?
I mean, for my clients, you've got some that are, you know, they've gone a little bit quiet in terms of, but it's not that they're stopping, it's just they're reviewing how they can kind of come back stronger. Yeah. And then you've got the others that are absolutely booming, and we've had more inquiries than ever before. So people are looking at digital. So, you know, we are telling the same story as you, but we're telling, you know, we're mainly telling it, like I'm telling it into consultants and in these webinars that we're planning to, you know, to upskill and to try these different things, to tell people that are already digitally transforming. It's it doesn't really work in the same way, because they already know what they need to do and they're already trying out new things that wouldn't necessarily be the said thing to do with other companies. But actually it is the thing to do, because this is the future now.
I wonder if that could be a chain reaction, though, from so your clients, for example, that are coming to you and they're exploring new digital solutions for the way that they work. I wonder if there could be a knock-on effect to their sector as a whole, and they could almost, you know, pass the baton, pass the message, so to speak. Could there be a movement in that, do you think, across different sectors to say, listen, you know, we're all in the same boat. This is what we're doing at the moment. Maybe you should have a look. Definitely. You know, open the communication to some extent.
Well, this is what the software does. It connects people, And everything on our like what we print out, our physical tech packs, we call them, they're all branded with our things. So if they end up in one factory and like someone's, oh, what's that, we're not using that, then they're like, oh, actually, can you connect me to that? And there's a supplier integration tool, and they can click it and they can see everything live. So sometimes it's a lot of suppliers, they're not digital, like they fear it. But once they see how easy it is, they're like, oh, actually, can you integrate me? And then as soon as you click that button to integrate, and they can see everything, that you start to see that they wonder why they haven't done it sooner. So it can definitely pass on.
Yeah. Well, I hope that happens most. I mean, certainly a message from us would be to, typically you kind of look at your competitors, if you like, and there's this kind of siloed ring fencing, and you're clinging on to your bit of the market, even in these really down times where you think even more so you feel like you need to cling on and stop the competitors. But actually, really, it should be the other way around. You should really open up and open your doors and talk to each other more. As I say, that they're all in the same position. If you get two brands of companies that make beans, they're both having the same issue with whether or not they can get enough cans of beans out around the world for all the reasons we've said. So I mean, embracing each other's change and transformation is just going to be good for a sector as a whole, and siloing is really just going to be bad for the sector as a whole, because everybody will just sink at the same time. So I think there's a real opportunity really just that the markets can completely transform now. I'm not saying you have to give away your secret tomato sauce recipe or whatever, but you can talk about logistics and working together and ways of controlling.
I'm seeing a lot of that in the tech industry, with companies that would typically be competition now saying we really need to work together because, with the situation that we're in now, with the demand that we're facing now, we need to work together. In fact, as we've been talking, I've just got a notification from MS Teams that we're using now saying they've just partnered with Slack and a couple of other similar services that were competition, to say, forget everything we've said in the past, we now all work together. You can message me on Slack or this or whatever, because they know that there's people out there using different softwares. People need to work together, and it makes sense for them to just collaborate and create a stronger ecosystem. So I think we'll probably see a lot more of that. I mean, obviously tech is normally quite embracing of this kind of stuff anyway, but I think we'll see that sort of pass down through other sectors as well.
Yeah. Well, this has been really interesting. Lucy, thanks for coming on today. It's been, I know it's been quite short, but actually some really interesting insights have come out there. I know manufacturing is definitely a big one that comes up all the time. And as we say, because it's so physical, there's always a little bit of a panic. But really, there are solutions out there, guys. And something like what Bombyx PLM is doing is a prime example of that, of linking things together and connecting you and making things digital and making things easier. So you should really have a look. Lucy, just for your thing, do you want to just give a shout out to your website or where people can look at what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on bombyxplm.com. That's our company website, and then I've got private LinkedIn /Lucy Blackley, Instagram /Lucy Blackley, and then everything else is just the Bombyx PLM on the handle. Yeah,
excellent. Thanks, Lucy. So reach out if you are at home and you are wondering what to do in your business. There are solutions out there. We definitely want to hear from you. We say in all the videos, we want to hear from you in the comments. If you've got ideas, you've got struggles, you've got suggestions, we want to hear it, because I mean, an idea shared just increases opportunity for everyone. So please feel free to comment. Please feel free to reach out to Lucy and ask her advice with what she's doing. She works a lot in manufacturing sector, so she can definitely advise you in that direction. Keep pushing forward, guys. Thanks very much for being on today. Stay safe. We'll see you all again soon. And folks at home, we'll see you for the next video.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.